Call to order the meeting of Monday, October 16th, 2017. We'll recognize that two of the commissioners are missing. President Scott Decker and Jason Friedrich won't be in attendance this evening, so we have Sarah Trustum and Carson Steiner. First order of business is order of business. Mr. Kessler, are there any changes to the order of business?
Commissioner Oltmans, I do have one addition that I'd like to make. At a previous City Commission meeting, we had a WDEA presentation, Western Dakota Energy Association. The presenter wasn't able to make it, so we moved that to report. I made that report. We do have the presenter here tonight, and he would like to make that presentation formally. That would mean a 5:15 timetable agenda item, if you're so inclined.
Okay. Does that work for the other commissioners? Okay.
That would be the only addition that we'd recommend.
All right.
I would like to mention that on the consent agenda Rice Lake agreement, I think it says 2018 in the document, and it should say 2019 as an end date.
Okay.
So that would be a change that would be required.
Okay. Let's start with the order of business first. Need a motion to approve the order of business.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries for the order of business. So consent agenda, is there anything that anyone wishes to discuss on the consent agenda?
Commissioner Oltmans, I would like to suggest that item C under the consent agenda is changed. This is the Rice Lake agreement for the old water shop. They are going to, well, they've been contracted by Southwest Water to raise the level of the deposits out there, and the contract says it'll end in 2018, and it should say it will end in 2019.
Okay. Ms. Kripe, you can make those changes to that? Or
I actually don't have the contract, but if they send it to me, I can.
Yeah,
Yep.
we'll
I
do
haven't
that.
reviewed that one.
okay, all right. Any other questions on the consent agenda? Okay, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the changes.
So move.
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Trustum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Consent agenda is approved. So we do have two timetable agendas, one at 5, one at 5:15. We'll start with the non-timetable agenda. And the first item on the non-timetable agenda is amendment to the liquor license ordinance, and that's Attorney Kripe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This is the second reading of the ordinance, which we had the last meeting. The only change, as I mentioned in the memo, is that we did clarify the old language had the word deliver as one of the prohibited items, and that's what we don't want. We want them to be able to pick up a beer that's already been poured from the bar and deliver it to a table. So I did just make that one change to make sure that servers can actually carry and transport the beverages from the bar to tables, but they can't pour, dispense, or anything else. So if there's a bottle of wine, they can pick up a closed bottle of wine and take it to the table, but they can't actually pour the glass. So
Okay.
someone over 21 would have to do that.
Right, this is the second reading and final passage. Commissioners, do you have anything to add?
Move to approve second and final pass ordinance number 1642.
Second.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Truscombe?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Amendment to the liquor license ordinance and second and final reading approved. Item B, this is also you.
Yes, President. Item B is updates to the criminal code, which are chapter 23. This would be ordinance number 1644. After reviewing chapter 23 with the police department and the court staff, City Prosecutor Wanko went through and updated some of the parts of the code to make sure that they agree with what the state statutes are. So some of it was updating things from infractions to Class B misdemeanors, updating fine amounts, things like that. It wasn't adding any new offenses or anything, it's just updating the penalties so that they're consistent with state law.
Okay. Since this is the first reading and ordinance, we'll need a public hearing on this one.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any comments before we open up the public hearing? Nope. All right, then we'll open up the public hearing. If you have any input on the first reading of ordinance number 1644, step to the podium, state your name, and we will hear what you have to say. All right, seeing no one from the public, we will close the public hearing. I'll look to the commission for either more discussion or,
Mr. Chair, I'd move approve first reading ordinance 1644.
Second.
all right, I have motion and a second. We will vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. First reading of ordinance 1644 passes. Mr. Craig?
Ordinance, the second one is same kind of deal with chapter 25 of the city code. This would be ordinance number 1645. And these ones are, again, updates to the criminal code. The first ordinance has to do more with some of the moving violations, traffic, things like that. And this one is more of your trespass, thefts, kind of the larger criminal violations. But again, not adding any new crimes, just updating penalties to be consistent with state law. And again, City Prosecutor Wenko did confer with the police department and the court staff to ensure that the draft is complete.
Okay, great. Any discussion from commission members before we open it up to the public?
Move to approve. Oh, sorry.
Let's- We'll open up the public hearing on ordinance number 1645. If you have any issues with ordinance number 1645, step to the podium, state your name. All right, hearing none, we will close the public hearing on ordinance 1645. And I'll look to the commission for some direction.
Mr. Chair, I will now move to approve ordinance number 1645.
All right,
Second.
second? All right, we have everything we need, so we will do a roll call vote. Ms. Trustum?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. First reading of Criminal Code Updates, Chapter 25, ordinance number 1645 is approved. It's the Haley Cripe Show. Let's move on to the HR manual.
Okay. This is the second reading of ordinance number 1637. You saw the first reading, I think, several months ago. Following that, there was some discussion with staff and the 3 staff representatives that were elected by the employees to make sure that we had everything in keeping with what they had agreed with the Civil Service Commission. Ms. Nominuk then took it back to the Civil Service Commission to make sure that all the changes that are in the draft, that the red line version that's included with your packet, are accurate, and the city employees did review it and agreed that those were an accurate depiction of what everyone had agreed to. The one issue that Civil Service did not take a position on, which is in your memo, and I believe that city administration may have some additional information for you on this, is in regard to the special benefits for retirees. So the city employees had asked that we make a change to the code, and the Civil Service Commission felt like they weren't properly equipped with the necessary information to endorse the change because there are some financial impacts. And so they are leaving it up to you as to whether or not you want this in there. And you'll see in the memo, it's regards section 18.9. Right now, any city employee who is at least 62 or who is 55 and has 25 years of service or has completed 30 years of service. So any one of those 3 criteria can get a subsidy for their health insurance up to a certain percentage upon retirement if they meet one of those criteria and until they become eligible for Medicare. Right now, there is the possibility that someone could be eligible for their retirement benefits under the pension plan, but not be eligible for the health insurance benefit under the code due to those years of service. So you'll note that I did put in the qualifier that they had asked for. So the motion would read, I move to amend the code to include the proposed provision to allow 30 years of service as the qualifying event, because right now that's not part of it. So that's what the pension benefit allows, 30 years of service regardless of age, and the code would not for health insurance.
Can you give me that section number again? You say 16.9?
18.9.
18.9.
Yep, it's called special benefits for
Got it.
retirees. Yep.
Okay.
So that was one thing they wanted you to consider. I know city administration does have some concern with the financial impact of that, and so I don't have the specific details on that, but I know there are concerns.
Mr. President?
Yep.
I think this is a conversation that needs to be had with the full commission.
Okay.
So I would make a motion that we table this till the next meeting so that we have Mayor Decker here as well as Commissioner Frederick.
I think it's an important decision. What do you think, Carson?
I was thinking the same thing. I'd be okay with the postponement.
So I have a motion to delay and a second?
Second?
All right, then we will vote on that. Mrs. Treston?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We'll delay this one until we have a full commission.
If there's any financial impact information specifically that you'd like from staff, the sooner you can relay that, the better, so that Deputy Administrator Carlson and Administrator Kessel can put together that data for you.
I think that would be extremely useful.
Very good. Any other discussion? All right. Then we will move to item D, and that is job descriptions and HR coordinator nominee.
Good evening, Commissioners. I have 3 job descriptions for approval. The first one being the engineering technician. This was recently reviewed and rescored just to kind of put this position a little bit more closely into the scoring that it should be, we felt. The duties, essential duties of this position did increase a little bit. This engineering technician is what most would probably refer to a one-call locator position. And they do a whole lot more than just one calls. So the position also assists with the sidewalk program. They assist with other city staff, especially the GIS, in organizing, updating, and keeping city infrastructure mapping up to date. They order locating supplies, let's see, some of the other things, service line installations. They're helping with public utility companies complete water, sewer, storm location requests, those sort of things. Another area that increased in the scoring was their leadership responsibility. In the past, we've had seasonal staff, and this position may be kind of a trainer, I guess, for the seasonal staff, may work with the seasonal staff specifically, also train other people who are in this position. So if we had 2 engineering techs, which we did at one point, this person would train the other person. And then also in the working environment, it did increase 1 degree, basically because they are working out in city streets and in locations where it can be a little bit more dangerous with traffic and just with the line locating and things that they do. We felt that it should be increased 1 degree. Because of those 3 changes to this job description, it did increase the points, and it did increase it 1 grade level. So it was at the lowest grade level on the pay scale. It will go up 1 grade level to a class 2. It was approved by the Civil Service Commission, and city staff and civil service would recommend approval.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions on the job description for the engineering technician for this nominee?
Move to approve, Mr. President.
Okay. Have a motion to approve,
Second?
second, and a second. So on the engineering technician, we'll take roll call vote. Mrs. Treston?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We approve the job description for the engineering technician.
Okay, thank you. The second one is the advanced computer technician. This is a new position for the IT department that was approved with the 2018 budget. But this position will be kind of a advanced troubleshooting position we have the computer technician right now. This obviously is the advanced computer technician. Take over for IT coordinator Meyer in his absence. Will configure, install, and provide advanced troubleshooting for workstations, network devices, and servers. This position will be kind of that lead role in his absence. May take on some leadership and supervisory duties at times. We are requiring a bachelor's degree for this position and 3 to 5 years of experience. A great deal of judgment and decision making is going to be part of this position. They, they'll be solving problems on their own quite frequently, not so much being reviewed by the supervisor on a day-to-day basis. Any questions on this job description? I guess I didn't tell you, it did score in a class 4, 725 points. This will be a non-exempt position, and it did fall within the range that was approved with the budget.
Okay. Commissioners have any questions?
I'd move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. We'll take a vote. Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Mrs. Treston.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The advanced computer technician job description is approved as well.
Thank you. And the last one is the IT coordinator. This position had not been scored to our new classifications that we were using with all of our job descriptions. It's been some time since it's been reviewed. So we did go through and score it and looked at some of the duties, and it was pretty outdated. So back in the day when Aaron was our only IT person, a coordinator was probably warranted. But now we look at it as being more of an IT manager. There are 2 staff members working underneath him. He does a lot more with servers, and the staff has increased quite a bit since he started with the city of Dickinson. His leadership responsibilities have increased with the increased staff. So it did score in at a class 5 with 925 points. It will move up a pay grade on the pay scale, but it will not be a pay increase as he's already within that pay grade already in his pay salary. So any questions on that?
So basically, it'll align the position to where he currently is.
Correct. Yes, that's exactly right.
Okay. I'd look to the commission.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right. We have a motion to approve and a second. We'll take a vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Treston?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Information Technology Manager job description is approved as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Castle, we have some reports.
Excuse me. Thank you, Commissioner Oltmans. I have like to start this evening with the Energy Development Transmission Legislative Committee. We will be hosting this committee on October 30th and 31st. We'll begin on the 30th at noon. I'd like to make a formal invitation to all the city commissioners to join us at these legislative committee meetings. They've already hosted the first one in Williston. This will be the second meeting of this group, and there'll be a third and fourth meeting, and one of those will be in Minot. So each of the oil hub cities will host this event. Senator Wardner chairs this committee, and he has been in contact with me and asked me to put together the agenda that you see before you. I will remind you that you've received the most updated copy today via an email. So the one that I think is part of this presentation is actually a little bit dated. So use the one that I sent to you as the final version. We have several city staff members that will present during this legislative committee meeting. It is a formal meeting, so we will, all of their documents, PowerPoints, and verbal presentation will be documented and presented into the formal record. So this will be considered testimony. We also have several community leaders that are scheduled to present, including Tom Mitzel from DSU, Doug Sullivan from the Public School District, Kelly Braun from the airport, and Jay Elkin from the county. Will all be presenting several, like, as I mentioned, city staff, including Fire Chief Sivak, Police Chief Dossinger, City Engineer Kubis, Public Works Director Zuroff, myself, Deputy City Administrator Carlson will all be presenting as well. It's really our opportunity to share with the committee our thoughts with regard to GPT revenue and making sure that they understand our need for continued support with regard to GPT revenue and the in lieu of property tax that it represents for our neck of the woods. Next slide, please. So this, just as a reminder, this is just your formal invitation. We'd love to hear you or have you there. Commissioner Oltmans, I understand you will be representing the city at an event in Bismarck, but I'd like to formally invite the rest of you to attend. The next agenda item is the Building Improvement Fund, and the reason for the presentation tonight includes a update from the budget presentations that you've heard and a little bit on the parking lot that we have been talking about for a couple of City Commission meetings. So at the budget meeting, we discussed the payoff of the the revolving loan fund related to the waste water improvements. It was a $350,000 about loan payoff. It had to do with lagoon improvements. And there was also an ESG loan in a very similar amount to that $350,000. This fund has about $1.5 million in it. The Commission's desires were to pay off both of those loan funds. So that would represents about $700,000 and just under half of the total amount in that fund. There's the parking lot was also this is the fund that we identified those expenses out of. Since we no longer can use asphalt as the material, finished material on that lot, we'll have to use concrete. The cost of that lot increased. We have a state mandated $150,000 bid requirement. If we think that a project is going to cost that much, we have to bid it. We're not sure if this bid will get to that level, but it might get close to that level. And so because of that, in an abundance of caution, we're suggesting that we actually bid the project as a formal project that would reach that $150,000 level. Whether it does or doesn't, we'll find out. So that's higher than the amount that we had presented to you earlier and wanted to make sure that you were aware of that and approved of that increased funding. The next item on the agenda then is a training simulator. This is an agenda item or a budget item that has been actually removed from the agenda or from the budget for probably the last 3 years up at the Public Safety Center. And Chief Dossinger has a brief presentation to remind you of what I mean by a training simulator. If you wouldn't mind, Chief Dossinger is willing to present.
Okay.
Good evening, Vice President, members of the Commission. Thank you for allowing me to take the time to explain exactly what the Virtua simulator system is. Basically, it's a training tool, state-of-the-art training tool for police across the nation, and it allows us to do numerous things and train for several events. Some of those include active shooters, ambushes, disturbances, domestic violence, dealing with the emotionally disturbed people, high-risk entries, hostage situations, allows us to deal with suspicious subjects, traffic stops. So there's a number of areas that we're able to train on utilizing this Virtua simulator system. Basically, it's a 300-degree or 180-degree wraparound video simulator. Enables officers to train for the most difficult real-world situations, including ambushes, active shooters, and maintaining full situational awareness while the officers endure stress. Officer present communication skills are all tested while utilizing this simulator. Utilizing the simulator, we're able to use our on-duty weapons such as our tasers, our Glock handguns, our shotguns, and our AR-15 rifles. The Virtua system offers superior realism in sounds. It's high-quality training. It allows us to bring an intensity into our training, and it also helps us reach our training objectives. We're able to do multi-scenario incidents. Real-life events don't end on one incident. With multi-incident scenarios, the scenario doesn't end just with one confrontation. And in real life, there are many results and outcomes that we can control with these scenarios. Additional benefits that we can have with the virtual training simulator is, as you know, we are engaged with Dickinson State University in bringing a law enforcement training certificate program to the university, joint effort between the police department and the university, and this would be a huge tool in allowing us to accomplish our training goals and training new recruits. Also, the Citizen Police Academy, we host that on an annual basis, allows our citizens to experience the stress and the decision-making ability that our officers have to endure on a regular basis. And also our Youth Academy. We also host a Youth Academy for high school age students every year, and this would be a tool that we could allow them to get a taste of what it is to actually be a police officer. They have to make those difficult decisions. Funding, the money that would be utilized to fund this project was initially ear-tagged for dealing with oil impacts. The training law enforcement officers and the situations that our officers have endured would be directly related to this. The Public Safety Center, as you know, was designed to be a home for a law enforcement training simulator. We have a room dedicated for this purpose. The law enforcement training simulator had been cut from the Public Safety Center budget and the initial design of it, and it has been denied, like City Administrator Kessel says, in the last 3 budget years processes. On cost of the project is actually a little less than what Mr. Kessel had indicated. New updates we have is about $220,000 for the budget process. I do have a short 90-minute video that I'd like to share with you, just to kind of get it encompass what exactly the training simulator would do.
Hey, come here. Let it go inside. Let it go inside.
Hey, stop. Come back here.
Hector, what's going on today? We were just playing, man. He's my brother. We were just wrestling out here, man.
Just playing. You've got blood all over your nose and lip.
I know. I just fell down and I freaking busted my lip, man.
Hector, tell the cops it's the budget of her property. We're not doing anything.
Ma'am, just
No,
relax.
shut up.
Stay up on the
Shut up.
porch. We'll be out of here in a minute. Hey, you guys settle
Chill
down.
out, all right?
Settle down.
I got
We got a few complaints. We'll be out of here in just a minute. As soon as we figure out what's going on. Hector, what's your brother's name?
His name is Juan.
Juan, how old is Juan?
He's 17.
He's 17. So tell me what happened here with you guys ending up on the lawn.
I mean, we were just playing. I mean, we were just wrestling out. We're brothers. How
Brother,
fucking kill you?
he's got a knife.
Hey,
put down the knife.
Come down. Hey.
Ma'am, step away from him. Put down the knife. Move away from him now. Put down the knife. That's your last warning. Put down the knife. I got him. Ma'am, not gonna tell you. Put down the knife. Don't do it. Put down the knife. You! Gray jacket, let me see your hands. I'm not gonna tell you again. Turn around, face away from me.
So that kind of outlines exactly what the virtual training simulator is. As you can see, that officer had dropped to his knees. There's actually an electronic impulse that's connected to the officer. Just so if he does get shot or stabbed, you would actually feel the electrical impulse going through his body, very similar to getting tased at a lesser degree. So, be happy to answer any questions if you may have some.
Who else in the state has this?
Right now, we're aware of 2. United Tribes have one in Bismarck, and the Grand Forks Air Base has one.
Okay.
Is it a, so we got this empty space at the facility that was built for this type of program.
That's correct.
So it's not producing anything, that empty space now,
Basically, right now, we're using it for storage.
right?
So,
Is this something that can be leased out for other departments to come and pay to use that?
it can be, that's a very good question. One thing that we pride ourselves as being kind of a regional hub for training. As you may know, we host trainings on a regular basis at our Public Safety Center. This would be a tool that we would like to share to other agencies. And once we get eventually, it's a possibility where we could maybe charge them at least for the warranty issues related with the program. Something to think about in the future.
I would be willing to recommend we bump it one more step into looking into that part of the whole deal of what we could charge for it to help supplement a payment of $220,000. You know, if you could get some type of verbal, not a commitment from other surrounding police departments, that would be enough to see if we should go through. I mean, I like the program. I remember you guys had one years ago. We were in it down in the basement of the old facility. I think it'd be good for our officers, but you know, if we can help get some payment from somebody else, plus give them the experience too.
Mr. Kessel, can you remind everyone about the building improvement fund and the monies that are in this? And
Certainly, Commissioner Oltmans, the Building Improvement Fund exists as a way, we took GPT revenue from the past and put it into this fund, and it helped to build the Public Safety Center and the Public Works building. Of course, when we dedicate those dollars, they were based upon a great deal of estimates and construction costs and such. So at the end of the day, when all of the bills were paid for both of those facilities, we had a residual balance of that $1.5 million. So the dollars need to be spent on oil-related or impact-related items. And that's why part of the presentation today on this potential training module. I will say, to address Commissioner Steiner's question, if the partnership between DSU and the City of Dickinson can be achieved with regard to establishment of a law enforcement academy, there may be a way to recover or recoup some of the dollars of our investment in this type of a training module with that relationship. I would also mention that this, you have tasked us with finding out if a training center to support that law enforcement and future fire training can be supported on our South Campus. This facility or this training can be moved to that site if it is something that we build in 5 or 10 years. And so it could be switched from the Public Safety Center to that training site so that it is more in line with the training center concept.
Did they give you an idea what updating would cost? Different programs? I'm sure this isn't one you'd have forever.
Yeah, this has roughly about 179 different scenarios built into it. There's
Included in the 220?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we'd included would be a 3-year warranty in that. After the 3 years, we'd be looking about roughly about a $20,000 renewal of the warranty service and the service agreement.
we're not making any decision tonight. This is all just a report to show possibilities of using the money that's left over.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's exactly. And if you don't mind, Chief Dossinger, I don't know if you want to make any comments. I know you've had a loss in your department, Nico. And
Yes, thank you for allowing me to make that comment. We did lose one of our canines, Nico. He was approximately about a 6-year-old Belgian Malinois. Unfortunately, he ended up having some stomach issues, ended up with torsion, and unfortunately, he did pass away yesterday at about 12:30. Him and his handler, Jaden Peters, were an excellent team. Nico was only three-time state champion in North Dakota, in the North Dakota Police Officers Association for finding drugs. So he was a very good dog. He's going to be greatly missed within our department.
So I was sad to hear.
My condolences to Officer Peters and the Dickinson Police Department. Terrible loss, not only to you guys, but to our community.
Thank you. And he recently did, unfortunately, he recently did find 15 pounds of marijuana just within the last month on one stop. So but, he was a very formidable tool for the department. So it's going to be, we're going to miss him.
He'll be greatly missed, that's for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Costello, I'm going to put you on hold for the rest of your reports. We have a 5 o'clock timetable, and so we will move to the Dickinson Public Library presentation. Director Ennin.
So good evening, Commissioners. I'm coming to you today on behalf of the library and the Library Foundation, both with some good news that I think you probably already know about, but it is official now, and with a few thoughts to present about future planning towards the library and a possible expansion. Next slide. So this is Thursday of last week. It is official. The picture on the bottom there is the president and treasurer of the Library Foundation handing a check to the vice president of the ARC board, and Pam Coling handing me the keys to the building. So where the old Arcade building was, which we don't have to call it that anymore, but the property immediately to the south of the library has been purchased by the Library Foundation. I think it's no secret they have for a number of years been dreaming about and slowly trying to work on and encourage the possibility of this, and so we're really excited about it. Also really grateful to the ARC for allowing us and working with us directly to make this purchase possible. Next slide. So we have this new property, and the first question, of course, is what do you want to do with that? And this is actually something that for some years we've been thinking about. And I just want to share with you some thoughts about what our plans and wishes regarding that would be. So when we're thinking about expanding the library, possibly, there are a number of things, obviously, but one of the greatest ones is for a creation of a dedicated space for children's programming. When the current library facility was last expanded, at that point in time, children's programming consisted of a story time once a week. Well, that has changed a lot. And even just in the last 3 or 4 years, that has changed a lot. Traffic in the city might have slowed down a little bit, but 700 plus babies born at the hospital last year is not a slowdown for any of us that are dealing with children or have that privilege. In June and July this year, during our summer reading program, more than 10,000 people attended our summer reading programs. That's more than our entire programming for the entire year when I first came here in 2014. So our programming has expanded immensely. Also, in the case of the children's programming, I've got a couple of pictures here. One of those is Lego Club. Another one is a special speaker that was in doing a program for kids. And we have increasingly been taking over the community room for those kinds of programs because the story room downstairs simply will not hold them anymore. Next slide. Here's one more on children's programs. The other thing that's different from when this facility was originally brought into use is the kinds of programming we're doing. So we're doing lots of STEAM, lots of hands-on learning kinds of programs, and none of the spaces that we have were, that just wasn't in anyone's mind at the time when they were created. My staff are terrific, and so is our very patient custodian in dealing with these activities in the places we can find to have them. But we would love to see a space that was specific to children and children's programming. Next slide. In addition to that, there are a few other things, obviously, that we would like to do to improve library services going forward. One thing we would like to do is relocate the adult nonfiction collections that are currently housed in the children's level of the library. It is possible that if we could get, it is actually a very large collection in a large space, and we could possibly actually do our children's programming space there and have everything for kids all on one level if we could move those collections. That has some benefits for adults and for staff too. To have all of our adults collections co-located would certainly be much more user-friendly than the current situation. We would also just like to not have any reason why anybody needs to be down in the kids area unless they're there for programming with kids. And for various reasons, that would safety, ease for our staff, not need to worry about it. It would be very nice to be able to do. Next thing we'd be looking for in a building expansion is some community meeting spaces. One of the things that really restricts the use of the community room is that it is only able to be used during hours when the library is open, the way the library is currently designed. Many libraries have these community spaces set up in such a way that the library proper can be closed, and outside of library hours, those community rooms and meeting spaces, auditoriums can still be used. So we would very much like to see that possibility come to fruition in an expanded building. We are also very short of any kinds of spaces for small committee meetings, small groups. We actually only have one room available for that at all. So anybody that wants to use it for tutoring or children's learning kind of programs, anybody that wants a meeting there, it's one room, that's all there is. And we could do with many more of those kinds of spaces. Another thing we're dreaming about, we would like to see the twice-sold tails come in under the canopy, so to speak, under the campus, into a space that was designed for what they're doing with it. They've done a great job with the old house where they are right now. They provide tremendous amount of funding for our programming in particular, but we would like to see that moved into that kind of a space, someplace where there are public restrooms, for instance, which the current bookstore lacks, and just a better designed bookstore type facility, also maybe a coffee bar and some seating, which is something that there's really no way to do where they are right now. Staff space, my staff has grown, the corners they're tucked into has not, and we could use a little bit more and better designed spaces for library staff. Green space for programming. We've done a little toe in the water with some of this outside of the building right now. We had 350 people there to view the eclipse with us. Of course, we do our summer reading kickoffs out there, but we've also had musicians on the lawn a couple of times. And you see a picture there of some children's programming taking place outside. So as we're looking at this new property, this is among the kinds of considerations too. What kind of green spaces could there also be that are community friendly? And then of course, parking. Our parking didn't grow when the staff did either. We currently have 7 spaces that are shared between the library and Twice Sold Tales. That's just talking about staff. And if we can make some accommodation for parking, I would imagine or hope that that would be of use, both for the library and possibly, for instance, for First on First. I know people come and park in our library parking all the time. So there would be other uses for that sort of thing if we had it. Next slide, please. So, on behalf of the foundation, they had asked me to come to you with a couple of requests, and here they are. First, we would like the city's assistance with the removal of the old building. And secondly, your support and permission for an RFP to hire a design team to begin doing some planning. Do you have any questions for me?
What kind of money? What kind of money are you looking for assistance with the removal of the old building and the design team?
Sean, could you speak to that, please?
In part of that presentation I was making on the Building Improvement Fund, it included some dollars related to this project. So the interruption was very well timed so that we could hear this and then we can come
Do you
back.
remember what that amount was up there?
Yeah, 170, I think.
70.
173.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds like a good plan. If you're moving ahead, you're going backwards.
Does the commission have any questions for Director Ennis?
I don't have any questions, but do you want to share? I know you guys have a program for Halloween for the kids. Did you want to share that so our viewers can
Sure.
be aware as well?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. A few things coming up, and I'll go even further if you will extend me your patience. This coming Saturday, Friends of the Library will have their annual book sale. That is in the community room. This is National Friends of the Library Week, so we're doing a little celebrating with them. Then we have several Halloween-specific events that are coming up. Friday, now I'm not going to have the dates on the top of my head, but the Friday before Thanksgiving, or the Friday before Halloween. Can somebody help me out? Sorry. I don't have
27.
the 27th. Okay, that Friday, the 27th, we do have our teen lock-in. This went over really big last year. So from about 6 to 9, after the library is closed, we are making the community room available. They have to be in by 6. We're locking the doors, and they will have a program and a party specific for teens. Then on Monday, which is the 30th, that date I do know, we will have our annual children's Halloween party, so 2 to 4 in the afternoon. The theme this year is Candyland. And then on Halloween Day on the 31st, the Bookmobile will be part of Trick or Trunk out downtown.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kessa, why don't we go back to your report just briefly before we go to our next timetable?
Okay. Commissioner Oltmans and members of the commission, you can see now that after the training simulator, I wanted to give a brief report on the airport, but I'm going to skip over that and go right to the library improvements and potential parking. Please understand that that function of that 173 is simply subtraction. It is not related to the project itself. Until the architect is engaged and they can really conceptualize that project, I have no idea what the expense would be. I do have some estimates of costs for the removal of buildings that we just completed. Building official Schwint was the project manager on that project. He has agreed to be the project manager if we engage in doing something similar to the ARC building and such here. So we certainly could do that. We could move forward with the deconstruction of those buildings, and Commissioner Schwint could help out. It would obviously take some dedication of dollars. It wouldn't take the whole 173 by any means, but there would be some funds expended. So the rest of that is an idea about support that the city could put into the construction of the new improvements and or parking. We heard a lot about parking with regard to the recent sale. We estimated a loss of about 22 spaces. If we're able to recover even a few of those spaces with a project like this, it's not that the distance isn't that far from the parking that we may lose across from City Hall. So certainly I think that'd be advantageous to try and address some of the concerns of those people who are concerned about the loss of potential parking. So maybe I should stop there.
I think so. And I guess I just remind everybody, this is just a report. These are just different scenarios that we're looking at. Library will obviously come back with some more numbers, and this is just preliminary at this point. We do have a 5:15 timetable, and that is going to be Jeff Simon, the Executive Director of the Western Dakota Energy Association.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Again, my name is Jeff Simon, Executive Director of the Western Dakota Energy Association, formerly known as the North Dakota Association of Oil and Gas Producing Counties. We're more than counties. We're also obviously cities and schools, and we're more than just oil and gas. We also represent the coal conversion counties as well in our association. What I want to talk to you about today is the interim hub city study. And as you see on the opening slide here, we actually have characterized this as a GPT formula change study. Gross production tax. Anytime you start delving into one element of that formula, you're bound to change another. So the approach we've taken to assisting the interim Energy Development and Transmission Committee, Senator Wardner chairs that. Our approach is to kind of look at the whole picture of oil impacted communities in western North Dakota. Does this by chance advance slides? There we go. All right. Let me back up one thing. I want you to know the association, the Western Dakota Energy Association, has contracted with AE2S Nexus for this work. That's the same organization that did the six-city study, which Dickinson was a participant last year, and we presented to the legislature back in January. And working with AE2S Nexus is Jadestone Consulting, specifically Brent Bogar, who I would characterize as sort of a GPT formula distribution guru. I mean, the guy knows that formula better than anyone I think I know. What I want to go through is just a quick summary of what we're studying, what we have now on hand, some of the data we've collected already, what we need to add to beef up the study, a proposed cost share like we did with the six-city study, and then kind of where we go from here. So this is some of the information that's in the study. We're looking at historic data, historic revenue, how it's played out over the years, other sources of funding for the hub cities and hub city schools, utility revenue, property taxes, kind of looking at local effort. And then obviously we're going into to look into what the needs are, how communities are impacted by this. Even down at the bottom here, the study actually, the language in the legislation contemplates eliminating hub city funding, which I think is a little bit far out there. But, one approach that Senator Wardner has taken to this is the GPT distribution formula is divided into two sides. There's a 1% side. It's 1% of 5%. So there's a 1% side and a 4% distribution side. And that 1% side are a lot of state buckets, state funds, and on the 4% side, it's a lot of that is broken in among the local political subdivisions. There is some serious consideration to moving that hub city funding from the 1% side into the 4% side, or 20-80%, however you want to look at it. That's what we're looking at in those last two items there. This is what I'm talking about. This is the GPT distribution formula. The hub cities now on that left-hand column, the 1% side, and you know, we're looking at the possibility of moving that over into the 4% distribution side, and obviously if that happens, a lot of those other buckets are going to change as well. So where we start with this baseline modeling, and baseline modeling by that, I mean where we started from before the oil boom took off. You know, what would Dickinson look like if we didn't have oil industry development? Because those are the gaps that should be covered by GPT taxes. The oil industry pays those taxes, and those monies rightly go back to local communities to address the impacts that are created. Political outreach, obviously we've got to identify our legislators, talk to them. The formula scenario development I talked about, you know, maybe looking at a total rewrite of the GPT formula. Local impacts, obviously. Benchmarking to non-oil communities, you know, we're going to look at, you know, how Dickinson might compare to, you know, pick a town, Devil's Lake or Grand Forks, and the community impacts there. And the red I've highlighted in here is something we've just added to this component recently. Increasingly, this is becoming kind of a quality of life issue, because it's about attracting workforce. That's where the industry is really struggling most right now, is attracting a viable workforce, because there is so much competition in other shale plays around the country. So we want to look at what the local economic conditions are in the Permian Basin, or the Eagle Ford in Texas, or the Scoop and the Stack in Oklahoma, to kind of get an idea, you know, how we, if you'll pardon the pun, stack up against the stack, you know. And then obviously we're going to package this all together, and we deliver it and share it to the interim committee. This is basically the same data, but the same information as the previous slide. I'd kind of point to the bottom right portion there. We're going to have detailed information about each of the political subs that are participating in this study. So, you know, as Mr. Kessel addressed earlier, for that October 30th, 31st meeting, some information very specific to Dickinson and the impacts you're seeing here, and what's anticipated going forward from here. Let's see, did I jump over one? No. Okay, so historically, I think you're all probably familiar with the six-city study that we prepared last year. Again, that was a cost-share approach. It's, you know, it was developed for the 2017 legislature with the idea that, you know, even in a low to moderate oil price scenario, communities out here are seeing growth above and beyond what we'd ordinarily expect, you know, fairly substantial growth. And the idea, at least when the study was initially developed, was to go in asking for more money. Well, obviously the 2017 session didn't turn out that way. We were entirely on the defensive from the get-go, but it has been useful for that defensive purposes to show that, hey, the impacts really are happening out here. There are legislators and people around the state who believe that the surge and everything, you know, everything's all taken care of, and that we can kind of back off in this GPT formula and spread it around the rest of the state. And we need to be able to tell the story. That's just not the case. So as I mentioned, we've identified, actually it's going to be probably more than 5 or 6, because right now, you know, we're looking at 4 cities, 4 school districts, probably 4 counties that we're going to look at. And the townships, we haven't really delved into that. We're probably going to, you know, want to show specific impacts in some of the townships, because their primary impacts are roads. That's their primary function. Not an issue here in Stark County, where all the townships are unorganized. The county highway department takes care of pretty much everything. But just want to go forward that and move on to the next part here. We're basically going to be putting together a package for the legislature. We'll look at that formula change, and then we're going to have the data to back up what we're seeking in a formula change. Again, Brent Bogar is our expert in that category, and he can really help us out a lot. So when you see Jadestone, think of Brent Bogar. You know, this is specific to each community. Each community has varying sources of revenue. They, you know, very hard to read what's on the bottom there, but the dark blue or the lighter blue is GPT. Sales tax revenue collections are going to vary. And these are percentages of the whole, of course, in each of these communities. Williston is different, for example, because they saw such a dramatic increase in the cost of housing there. They made a conscious effort to hold down utility rates to try to keep it affordable in the community. So you'll see those kinds of variations among each of the cities, and we want to be able to explain that to the legislature, why that is, maybe why the utility rates are lower in Dickinson or Williston than they are in some other community in North Dakota. We're also, you know, kind of in the process of looking at other metrics to more accurately measure this. You know, we've had, to this point, the employment figure, mining employment. It was oil and gas employment. Now we're looking at a mining employment number. So we're looking at maybe delving a little bit deeper into those SIC codes to more accurately portray just what is oil impacted employment in Dickinson or Williston or Watford City. And there are other measures, truck traffic, you know, there are traffic counts that DOT collects and things like that to, you know, to more accurately characterize just what impacts you see happening out here. We're looking at, you know, every possible detail we can to, you know, to try to tell the story here. So this is the timeline. Obviously, we got underway in August already. We had an interim committee meeting in Williston. Mr. Kessel was at that meeting. I think, I believe the president of your commission was there as well. So he kind of saw how that was, I'll use the term orchestrated. I mean, it was a very well-organized presentation. And you've heard the list of presenters that you've got lined up for the meeting here, October 30th and 31st. That's going to be ongoing. We've got the meeting here in Dickinson at the end of the month. Late 2017, there's a meeting tentatively scheduled in Minot, probably the week after Thanksgiving is what we're looking at. And sometime after the first of the year, we'll be looking at the counties and townships and how to present that information. And then finally, you know, a kind of all-encompassing package with proposed formula change sometime in the spring of next year. As I mentioned, we're requesting a cost share from the city of Dickinson, similar to what we did with the hub city, and I believe this is the same amount it was before as well. As you can see there, Minot was not part of the original 6-city study, so the amount we requested of Minot was a little bit higher to kind of get them up to speed. The Williston City Commission has approved this. Watford City has acted on it as well as McKenzie County, Dunn County. I'm actually going to be putting in some serious windshield time because I'll be in front of the Montreal County Commission in Stanley tomorrow morning to talk to Montreal County. But we're asking for, you know, a modest cost share of each of these, and generally matched by our association, which is planning to put up $50,000. So these are not to exceed amounts. Basically, it's tracked hourly. The costs of developing the data will be tracked hourly, and so these are maximum numbers. And with all superstition aside, that was my 13th slide, and I'll stand by for questions if you have any.
Just a comment here. You have a lot of work to do in a short amount of time.
Seriously, yes, we do.
I think the biggest thing up there that I see that if it's going to affect us out here is your political outreach efforts. You know, those are the guys that we saw this last session, you know, that kind of threw a rock in the road in front of us, you know. And, you know, they're not quite understanding that even though oil isn't here as big as it was, we still have situations here that we had to do back then to make things flow like they are now. And we still got to pay those bills, you know. So to me, I think that's one of your more important, you know, objectives out there.
I would agree with that.
Outreach.
I would agree with that, Commissioner. And the kind of linchpin we got there is that Senator Wardner is chair of the committee. So we're having a meeting, had a meeting in Williston. We're having a meeting in Dickinson. We'll have a meeting in Minot. So those legislators can see it firsthand. We're organizing a tour, right, the first day. So they'll see some of the impacts, see some of the facilities that have been needed, and maybe, you know, I hope you're taking them through the airport so they can see the unmet needs as well.
How do you educate the eastern part of the state legislatures and so on?
just with what we're doing right now. We put the data together, we look, we look at the population numbers, school enrollment figures, all of those things, just to show them, it's hard to argue with the facts. When you see the numbers and, you can show that this is what's happening with this oil price scenario. I mean, we've got almost 60 drilling rigs out there, and they're drilling more efficiently than ever. That's the equivalent of, 120 rigs 5 years ago. There is a lot of activity going on out there, and although it may not be happening right here in Stark County, a lot of those companies are basing their operations here, hauling out of here, materials are being delivered here. Those are the things we need to be able to document. That's what we need
Are
to
you
show.
looking for the approval of the 12-5 tonight?
Pardon me?
Are you looking for the approval of the 12-5 tonight?
Yes, I guess I am, yeah.
Where did we leave that, Sean, at our last meeting? Because you did a thumbnail presentation of this.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. Yeah, the 12.5 it was the number that the WDA is looking for sponsorship from the city of Dickinson. We did not make a vote at our last commission meeting regarding it. It was just a report. So that's why it's on the timetable agenda tonight. You don't have to make a decision this evening. We do have some time, but as was pointed out earlier, time is of the essence, and we are hoping to use some collected data at our presentation. We do have Mr. Gaddy, who represents AE2S, is on our agenda and is planning to make a presentation. I would love to have some of the data that he's gathered already, especially the comparison to other plays, prepared and at least preliminary results presented. So although we wouldn't have to make a decision tonight, it would be better for WDEA if we made a decision tonight.
Then you'd get to update your slide before you go on your next 2 visits.
Yeah, I can put approved on there before I go to Stanley tomorrow, yeah.
Mr. Steiner, did you want to spend some money while Decker's away, or
It's
do
an
you
amount.
wait until he gets back?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the 12-5 and funding for support.
I would need a second on that.
Mr. Vice President, I would second that. I don't foresee any issues from either President Decker or Commissioner Frederick in regards to allocating this money to this purpose. So,
Neither do I. So with a motion and a second, we will go to vote. Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mrs. Trustum?
aye.
Chair votes aye. The 12,500 is approved.
Thank you, Commissioners. I do look at this as it's a good investment
It's
on
a
the part
very
of
good
the city
investment. It
because
worked very well for us in the past. We would have never got where we did if we hadn't done this the first go around.
it really needs to be a team approach among the oil-impacted region of the state. And, 2019 could be an even tougher budget session than 2017 was. So we need to have our ducks in a row and be able to tell the story. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your hard work. Appreciate it.
Drink some coffee before you leave tonight.
All right, we'll go back to reports with Mr. Kessel.
Thank you again. I hate to keep referring back to this slide, but we haven't left it yet. The last item that we haven't really talked about is the Theodore Roosevelt Regional Regional Airport number that's up there. There have been discussions with the airport that included Commission President Decker, myself, a couple of county commissioners, a couple of airport commissioners, trying to solve the problem that represents the $4.1 million local share that the airport has to arrive at in order to do their project, their airport runway project. That project is over $60 million, so we have significant partners in the FAA and in the state of North Dakota. And so in trying to come up with a plan to deal with that $4.1 million, there was approximately $650,000 that had to be dealt with before for work done in 2018. And of that amount, the tentative plan was $250,000 grant from the city of Dickinson to the airport. The county would do something north of that, more likely in that 440 range. And what that does is gets us to 2019. The hope then is we can address the state legislature, confirm their commitment to the project, hopefully get a few extra dollars related to the project, and thereby look at what's remaining. There'll be about $3.1 million remaining for projects in 2019, 2020, and 2021. So by allocating this amount, assuming that the county will allocate their grant amount, that means that construction will take place. They'll be able to do all of the construction required in 18 to prepare for 19 and 20 and 21. So I'd love to stand for questions. Kelly Braun, the airport director, is on our presentation schedule. We are going to be actually going out to the airport. They will see the facilities that we operate out of, and they will see the airport that we operate out of. So there was a tentative agreement 2 sessions ago that Minot would be taken care of first. They not only built a new runway, but they built a terminal. Williston would be taken care of next, and that was the last session, and they were taken care of. I'll call it. I'm not sure that it's to the satisfaction of the city of Williston, but they were. And so Dickinson was supposed to be next. That means this session is supposed to be ours. We do not include a terminal in this round of funding requests, but a terminal is in our future. I anticipate that that will be 2, 3, or 4 sessions down the road. This construction is just a runway, safety areas, and a taxiway that will be adjacent to the runway, obviously. So,
Okay.
so that's my presentation tonight. It is a way to spend the 1.5 in that fund, and I'd love to have continued conversations about these investments.
Okay.
Now conclude my report on the Building Improvement Fund.
Okay. Next report.
Next report is the tree bowl. We did have, this is new, we've been awarded the Tree City USA and designation in 2017. And Commission President Decker did represent us at the tree bowl. It actually was a bowl in terms of a football game. So he did go down, and they wrapped all of the presentations and things around the James Madison NDSU Bison football game. So in case you're not sure which one is President Decker, he's the tall guy with the plaque. So he did represent us. He did get the plaque. He'll bring that back today, and we'll be able to proudly display our dedication to tree planting in Dickinson.
Perfect.
So then the next item that I have is just a couple of thank you notes. The City of Dodge received some dollars from our Southwest grant, about $1,500. So they sent us a thank you, excuse me, for our participation in their project. And then, of course, the Stout County Veterans Memorial recognized our contribution to that project. I would also like to mention, as you walked in today, you noticed that we have a logo in the concrete as you come through our main entrance. A very similar logo has been placed and is on site at this project. And so the City of Dickinson is well represented on that very worthwhile project. They hope to be done by about February with construction and have a ribbon cutting and have it available to the public. So that would conclude my reports this evening, unless there's questions.
Any questions from the commission? All right, then we will move on to public safety, and we have a presentation by Fire Chief Seaton.
Good evening, Vice President and Commissioners. For a long time, throughout my reports, I'm sure you've heard me talk about the Insurance Service Office, usually referred to as ISO, and the requirements of that, or the recommendations of that organization, its impact on fire departments and its impact on the community. One of the things that ISO does nationwide is rates fire departments and communities on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the best you can be, to 10 being virtually no fire protection at all, in what they call a public protection classification number. And again, nationwide, by many, many insurers, that's looked at as a means of determining what insurance premiums will cost in a given area. For many years, the City of Dickinson and the Dickinson Fire Department had the privilege of being a Class 4 ISO rating, Class 4 public protection classification for the community and for the fire department. During the boom years, going into the boom, we barely hung on to that classification just by the skin of our teeth. And as a result, however, of the rapid growth of the community by the boom, what was done with infrastructure, water mains, water storage, communication centers, a second fire station, the public safety center, additional fire department personnel and equipment, I'm pleased to tell you that as of our last evaluation, the City of Dickinson, effective January of 2018, will have a public protection classification of 3. The Dickinson Fire Department will be a Class 3 fire department. So that underscores, I believe, some of the things that were necessary that the community did, whether it was in personnel, whether it was in fire apparatus, or whether it was in infrastructure, to build our community to match what was happening. This is one of those good things that we can look at and say, look at this. So just wanted to share that with you.
Well, that is very good. I can remember many meetings that we were looking at the budget and going from an all-volunteer to more employees and just trying to hang on to that 4. That's amazing that we hit a 3. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have nothing from engineering, nothing from the police department, nothing from public works, so we'll move to tab 8 and planning and county planner Joseph with a zoning code text amendment.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening. I'm pinch hitting for Planning Director Hadley today. This is the second reading of a proposed change to the zoning ordinance. It's a cleanup. This is something staff came up with, and it's a cleanup under the low-density residential zoning district. Is supposed to be expressly for large lot development, but currently it allows for it permits both single-family attached housing and allows for duplexes, which really doesn't match the intent of the zoning district. So this is just an ordinance that would remove those as allowed uses in the low-density residential zoning district. This is the second reading. There's no change from the original, the one that you heard 2 weeks ago, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Commissioners, you have any questions?
Move to approve second and final passage.
Okay, I have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. We'll take the vote. Mr. Steiner.
Aye.
Mrs. Trustin.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Second reading, final passage of ordinance number 1643.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. We have nothing from building and code enforcement. Do I have anything from the commissioners?
No, sir.
All right. Last, we'll move to public issues of city concern not on the agenda. If anyone from the public wishes to approach the commission, just come up to the podium, state your name, and tell us about your issue. Seeing none, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are